My name is Martha Crawford. I'm 50 years old. I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. My husband is a Jewish American who was born in Princeton, New Jersey. His family are Holocaust survivors, and he's first generation. And my two children are both born in Korea and adopted. For our family, one of the things that means a lot to our kids is understanding that when they're listening to music or watching a drama, that their first family members could be watching that same drama in Korea. So in that way, part of my responsibility is to forge a relationship with sort of contemporary Korean culture standing in as a transitional object almost between our household and my kids' first family. The other responsibilities are to make sure that my kids have access to Asian American and Korean American role models that they can turn to as mirrors, because there are ways that I can't mirror my kids' experience, and there's experiences I haven't had that I can't negotiate for them. I can't lead my kid through experiences of anti-Asian racism. I haven't fielded that or coped with that. I can learn about it, and I can strategize with them, but it leaves them always in the lead. How would you like to solve that problem? How would you like me to address that with your school? And it's important, I feel, to have Asian American role models that my kids can call directly. It's, I think, important for me to understand and for our kids to understand that even though we can't mirror their experience entirely, we can provide them with access to those experiences. The last chunk of responsibility I think that's important is, or at least for me, is that I never wanted my kids to experience extremely violent culture shock when and if they do a roots search and return to Korea, and however, for a visit and when we've traveled back to Korea. And I think that's been really relieving and important to see that that was actually possible. I can't inculcate them in the nuances of Korean culture because I am an outsider in that. But they do know that if they spend the night at, Imo Hyun's house and they have a bath at her house, that it's going to be a very different experience, right? It's going to involve a lot of scrubbing and giant buckets of water being thrown on them in a way that's really different from the quiet bubble bath filled with slimy bubbles that I would draw for them. So, so that they can experience that they're, that even if they don't necessarily feel that some cultural experience isn't their home base, it's still not something that flabbergasts them or terrorizes them or feels like an assault. And that's something I think was another big motivator for us in really trying to broker intercultural relationships for the kids. When we adopted Lucy, we brought my son with us, and about 2.5 years ago we went with both of them for the first time, and again, that's something we were really lucky about. My family's religious background is Quaker, so I contacted the teeny tiny little Quaker meeting in Seoul, and the clerk of the Quaker meeting, when we first adopted, met us at the airport, and at no time were we left alone in Korea, and every meal we've had in Korea has been in someone's home or at someone's favorite restaurant. So we've never been on a bus, right? We've never been on some tour bus or stayed at an agency guest house, right? We've really had a chance to have really personal relationships. But what was mostly nice was seeing the kids being able to, go to the playground and have enough Korean to be able to negotiate relationships there, and to have a deck of Korean Pokemon cards and be able to say like Miguksaram and show his American Pokemon cards and his Korean Pokemon cards, and like instantly have a whole gang of boys doing whatever they do with Pokemon cards. So it was mostly nice seeing that experience for them. And my son said at one point, Mom, when we got to Korea, I thought we were gonna have all this different, and everything was gonna be different here, and I just realized it's all the same, right? Like I thought there'd be Korean food, but it's really just food, like we eat all the time because we eat Korean food and we cook Korean food. So there wasn't this experience of like, ooh, what's that, or never having seen something before. So that was a big relief. My daughter was, excited. I think I've seen this street in a drama, so. That sense of feeling home and feeling some familiarity. And again, that's in large part due to the relationships that we've had in our lives that have, brought us, these experiences. And my kids have really grabbed onto them. I mean, it was, first of all, you have this intense trance, I'm sorry, I'm a therapist, so I'm going to use, I try not to use jargon. I have an intense feeling of, overwhelm anytime I'm in Korea, because Korea made me a mother, right? Like the first moment I held my children, or it's in Korea, and it's so overwhelming. So that experience is, the smells and the light and the food and the sounds and the way strangers would smile at my child or click their tongues or play, feel so embedded with these moments that are crystal clear in your psyche that, that I can never go back without, feeling this intense sense memory for, such a vital moment. It's amazing to see them, swim in the waters of Korea and claim that, that just feels so pride-inducing to see, my daughter at a museum and say, Mom, at the museums here, everything's Korean, right? In America, there's just one tiny room, but here everything's Korean. To have that experience of them having those mirrors is amazing. There's the shadow side of that is that instead of them feeling that we're a visible family and I'm the dominant culture and they're seen as something different, they have to tolerate seeing how blatantly I stand out and how blatantly my husband stands out. And there's times that makes them anxious, and I see them claiming me a lot, or my son. In American culture, it's not so unusual for a 9-year-old to want to snuggle in, right, and really want to sit on my lap on the subway maybe if he's having a vulnerable day. In Korea, that, he's snuggling in and feeling vulnerable, and he's snuggling up to a white lady, and everyone's, the scrutiny is really intense. There's a photograph of the last time we were there where we were literally on what was almost an empty subway car, and the kids were sitting by themselves, and my husband and I are holding straps near them, and there's literally 20 people, everyone on the car is circled around us staring at my husband and I directly. So for me that's a chance to have some empathy about what that burden is like for them when we're in, fortunately we live in New York City, so we don't experience the narrative burden of being a visible adoptive family too often. But, when we travel in the United States, you can feel mile by mile are becoming increasingly visible and what that's like for them. So, when I'm in an environment where I'm the only white person, I breathe and bear the scrutiny and try to use that as a chance to have some empathy for what my kids' experience is like. I think the best part, one of the things that I love is my son and my daughter being able to see powerful, intact, Asian men in portrayals in the media. That means an extraordinary amount. It's also nice, I try to be a little thoughtful about how I curate. Their drama watching I always pre-watch. But, if there's a few back hugs, that's fine. But I, more and more in the Korean dramas, there are starting to be also pretty empowered female characters, right, who aren't only trapped in very traditional positions, right? Secret Garden, she's a stunt woman, or and so we try to watch dramas that allow for some real discussion and exploration of cultural differences in gender and gender role and portrayal, and we talk about how this stuff is going to be portrayed differently in Korean dramas than it might be in American television and or movies, and how do you make sense of that, and what are your thoughts about it? And they have a lot that's interesting and valuable to say about that. The other thing I really like about it, I really just love that it exposes their language, and they're addictive. I love watching my daughter stand up and scream, "He's so handsome!" Right? Like, she literally, bounces on the couch, and it's very exciting. For myself, most selfishly, do I hope to be able to express something to my children's mothers and first family members someday? If they permit me to, if my children permit me to, they may not. I would hope. There's a lot I would want to convey. Like what amazing people they gave birth to, and sorrow for all that they didn't get to watch unfold, and gratitude isn't quite the right word, because I don't think it was a gift, but it was their loss, but I would just want them to know that I've been in internal relationship to them every day since those children came into my home. I'm Martha Crawford, and this is my Korean American story.